What's up, you guys? Today we're going to do a nitty-gritty FL Studio beginners tutorial / tour where I'm going to show you the things I think are most important for you getting started. So instead of wasting any time, let's get to it. Please smash that like button and subscribe. So when you first open FL Studio, you're going to be met with something like this. You're going to have a few important screens, and those are going to be your channel rack, which you can open here, your mixer, which you can open here, your playlist, which you'll open here, your piano roll, which you usually won't open here, but you can, and your browser, which is over here on the left. If we open up our channel rack and our playlist, we'll see two different modes. We have pattern, which is going to play across our pattern here, but not play in the playlist. Then we have song, which will play in the playlist, but not within the channel rack. This allows us to make different beats, sequences, and melodies within our channel rack, and then we can put them in different orders, stacked in different ways here within the playlist, which will overall create the arrangement of our song. First thing we'll concentrate on is the channel rack. The channel rack is where all of the assets of your FL Studio project will live. This includes all audio files, as you can see here, all the audio files we opened in samplers, as you can see here, all of our instrument emulations, plugins, synths, things like that. Now, each and every color of the sequencer here is going to be a beat. So we have 4 beats. If I put a kick on each beat, we're going to get a dance music kind of feel. To place things on the sequencer, we left click. To delete, we right click. You can either right click or you can right click and drag, as well as left click or left click and drag. The left click place and right-click delete is pretty universal within FL Studio. Now, if we want to drag more samples from the browser into FL Studio, we can do that by finding something, clicking, and dragging it. This is actually a sampler instrument. Meanwhile, wave files in your browser will look like this. If I want to replace a sound that's in one of these samplers here, I can drag and drag over, and it'll now replace it with a new sound. If you have samples of your own that you're bringing from another DAW, you can put them in the browser here by going Options, File Settings, and adding the folder here. Adding the folder here will add it into your dropdown, where you can have folders like this one that I have from Splice, where I keep a bunch of samples. This packs section here, if you don't have a bunch of samples, is where FL Studio stock samples are going to be. So this is where you can access a lot of your stock sounds. Now, if you want to add virtual instruments, you can do it by either clicking this plus here, and you can go through and choose things that are available to you, or you can click Add in the top left. Both will give you the same exact list. And all you'd have to do is choose something available to you, and it'll load in a new slot. If you want to replace something in this slot, you can right-click, replace, and choose from this same exact list. Also, if you have your own VSTs or virtual instruments, you can add those by going More Plugins, Manage Plugins, and then Find Installed Plugins, which will search all of these file paths here to find third-party plugins that you might have installed in your system. If you're interested, I have videos on free plugins to cover just about everything you would need. I've got one video for instruments and one video for mixer effects. Along with adding things to the channel rack, we can right-click and delete. We can also batch delete by highlighting multiple, clicking Alt on our keyboard and delete, which will get rid of more than one. We have a sorting option here. If anything ever disappears, you've got this little drop down here. It'll happen sometimes. Just go back to all. For example, if I go loops and I go back to here, you'll see I'm in audio section. If I want my samples back, I'd go all. And now that I've got these in here, I'll build a little drum loop. Cool. And now that I've got that, this is where the playlist comes in handy. I can put these in the playlist. And to avoid how I had to slide and place these, we've got a drop down here, which is our snap to grid. And we can just snap it to line. And there we go. And now that we have that, we could actually create a new pattern to put over the top, and this can contain our melody. Now, before we get to that, I want to go over the fact that just like we can add, we can delete in here the same way as in the channel rack. We have an array of tools up top. We have our pencil, where we can just kind of put one thing. We've got our paintbrush, where we can paint multiple. We've got our mute option, where we can turn things off or on that we might or might not want. Select is a huge one, same with cut. However, pro tip, if you just keep it on the paintbrush, you can click Control and drag to select, or you can click the button C to turn it to your cut tool, where you can just drag through things to cut them. If you want to cut off the end of something and make it disappear, you can right click, and that'll completely remove the smallest end. If you do it in the middle, it will get rid of the end that is closest to the end. Also, if you hold Shift when cutting, it'll help snap you to the grid, so we can batch cut the end of a bunch of stuff at once without worrying about it getting all wonky. To go back to the brush, we click B, and we're good to go. Now, if we've made a full pattern, like we have here with multiple instruments, and we want to, for example, take the hats out of our pattern here, instead of trying to cut them out individually, we can either right-click our pattern up here, which is how we're going to shift through the different patterns in our channel rack. See here, I can see our pattern 1, and then it goes on forever. We can right-click this and go to split by channel, or we can come over here. This section over here is where we're going to see anything that's in our playlist. So patterns is here. Audio clips, if we have audio clips in the playlist, will appear here. And this is for automation clips. Automation clips we'll talk about in a second, but that would appear here. And even if they aren't in the playlist, they will still be able to be dragged into directly from this over here on the left-hand side. So if we right-click in here, we can click Split by Channel. Now that we've done that, we can actually see that this is split into multiple different patterns, all containing the different options here. Now, instead of having to drag each one of these around, let's go over something a little bit simpler. If I wanted to split these channels, I can actually delete these patterns, right-click, split by channel, click the first one that I want, hold Shift, and click to the last one in the row that I want. It'll select all of them, and then we can drag all of them into the playlist. And to continue to increase our speed here, if we were to do that, we can select them, hit Control B as many times as we want to duplicate it, and it'll duplicate all the way across. Now I want to select these, scoot it back, Control, select, scoot back. So now if I click play, you'll notice we're only getting one of them, and we're not getting this in here because we're not in our playlist mode. Click song. Now we're in the playlist. We can move stuff. Right? And now we have 4 bars worth of music. Each one of these numbers up here is a bar. That way you don't really have to count. You can look. And we're going to have 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4 per bar. So if we watch this in here, you'll see that it gets to the end every time we start a new bar. So let's add some chords now. To do this, we'll come into Instruments, drop something in here, and we will right-click Piano Roll. In here, we can choose whatever we want to put it on. So let's go to a new pattern, pattern 4. I generally like to place my patterns within the playlist. That way it plays as the rest of the song does. We'll double click, go back to Piano Roll again, and now we'll talk about the piano roll. So in this piano roll, we have these heavy lines here. These are for our beats. 1, 2, 3, 4 beats per bar. We've got our bars on the top. Looks a lot like our playlist. Just like our playlist, we have some of the same options and tools, as well as some of the same shortcuts. C for cut, Control to select, B for brush. We have our same snap to grid. Now, something else cool we have is if you are not good with music theory, click the drop down, go to View, and in here, we're going to have a section kind of towards the middle-ish bottom. Where's it at? Scale highlighting. In here, you can choose any scale type you want. If you want to do a regular minor, you do a minor natural, and you can do that of any note. So we can do a C minor, C sharp minor, D sharp, whatever have you. Right now, mine is at C minor. And so all of these notes that are highlighted a brighter color back here in the background are part of my C minor scale. So as long as I stay within these notes, I will be okay. Again, if you're new to music theory, quickly for making chords, take anything in your scale like this and just get rid of one of the highlighted notes on the in-betweens. And that is a good way to create chords. Okay. You can keep them closer together, but that's a little bit more complex. Experiment with both, but if you're just getting started, keeping it separated like that is a great way to go. Let's turn that down. Now, if you have a MIDI keyboard, you can set that up to play in here. And you can do that by going Options, MIDI Settings, find your MIDI input here, click Enable. I would assign it to a port number. And generally you want to assign an output port number to the same, but I got a whole video on those settings. If you want to check it out above. If you don't have a MIDI keyboard though, something cool FL Studio does is we can use our actual computer typing keyboard as a keyboard. So to do this, you'll click this typing to keyboard option here that I clicked, and then you can just play. The problem you're going to have with this is now our shortcut C for our cutting and our shortcut B for our brush are gone. If you want to change this though, you just click it off, or Control T is the shortcut, and then you're good to go. Now, the reason I would click it off when in here is because Control T in here is a shortcut for creating a timestamp, same within the playlist. That's a little bit complex. Just click the button. For anybody who cares though, if you're in something like the channel rack, Control T will turn this off and on. So you've got this beat playing, you're playing some cool chords, you want to record it, what do? Right? I played the chords, they aren't my playlist, what's next? So you have a record button up here. Now, just turning record on won't always do what you want it to do. You have to right-click it. And right-clicking it is going to give you options. This is your recording filter. Anything here that is checked is things that will get recorded. So if I don't want my speaking through this microphone to get recorded, for example, I need to uncheck audio. If I don't want automation recorded, I need to uncheck automation. If we want notes, which is what we're playing with the keyboard recorded, well, we'll probably want that checked. And so we'll leave it on. Now that we know what we're recording and what we're not, we can check this recording button, and we can now record to this playlist. Right? And now that I'm done, it finished over. Now, what if these beats weren't here? And I want to start with a melody. How am I going to stay on time if I don't know what the timing is and can't hear it? Well, for that, we have a metronome. So, our metronome is going to be our saving grace. Now, if I want to record, I've got the metronome to help me out there. Now you'll notice we're missing some of the end of this clip. What happened? What do we do? Well, we can click the end and drag, and that'll reveal the rest of that clip. Now, let's say that I'm playing something a little more complicated, and I need to be able to punch in my piano. So and let's say that I didn't get some of that right. So I want to correct it. It's like, I didn't get that one right either. Well, the point I'm trying to make here is, if you notice, I'm going to click Control-Z, which is our undo. You'll see here, I'll click Control-Z again. A lot of these got replaced and deleted. Now, why is that? That is because I started recording here, and anything afterwards got deleted. If I was to, for example, you'll see that these 3 notes I played deleted all of that happened after them until I let go. So if I want to record over something or add over something, I might have a bit of a problem here. And this is going to come to your next recording options. Blend recording is going to allow you to add things over. This is good for punching in and adding stuff to the top of simple chords and stuff like that. If I click play, as you can see, I recorded that underneath everything with no interruptions. And that is going to be your blend recording. Another option we have is loop recording, which is also worth noting. Instead of playing it forever, it'll re-loop and continue recording. This will actually affect your audio inputs though. Sometimes it'll mute your audio, unmute, some interesting stuff like that. If you want to learn more, again, video above. I do a lot of FL Studio videos, so I'll probably have quite a few of these. But yeah, we've got a basic little thing going. Now, some quick stuff to help you out. The tools in here that I think will be most important for you is we have our Q for quantize, where you can do Control Q or Alt Q. We'll have to turn off our type to keyboard, of course. And Control Q will snap everything to this grid you have chosen here. Or we have Alt Q, which will snap you to that grid with some other options, sensitivity, and how close are we snapping start time, and things like that. Now, I was quite early with quite a few of these, so I will shift them a little bit by holding Alt and shifting. That is going to be very important for you for getting stuff correct or shifting stuff a little bit to make it more human because we're never right on time. So if you notice here, if I click and it's snapped to the grid, if I don't want to go up to this grid every single time, which you don't, trust me, just hold Alt, click and drag. So now that I got those closer over there, I will hit Alt Q. And I will let off on this start time a little bit so some of them stay off time, and boom. And if you'll notice, we still have a little bit of a mess going on here, but that's okay. I will do a little bit of fixing because I can. Cool, now that I did those quick adjustments, the next really important thing that I think you really need to know about is Alt-R to humanize it a little bit. And I want you to hear this before and then after. So if I hit Alt-R, now, what just happened? So what Alt-R is going to do is it's going to allow you to randomize different things having to do with your stuff in the piano roll. So first thing first, velocity. Velocity is going to be how hard or how loud something's played. You can kind of think of it as volume, but it oftentimes affects more than just volume. So velocity, the velocity in which we play notes as humans is not static and consistent and the same. That'd be kind of crazy. So you can actually change and randomize it here. And you can also change the seed if you don't like how it's sounding. And that's going to have a huge effect. Versus, notice how much less life is in there when I turn that down. Right? Sounds better with it up. But also, we did get a volume increase. Something about audio to remember is the louder something is, the better you perceive it as being. So volume increases can trick you, but changing the velocities like this, I promise, helps. Next reason this is wonderful is if your instrument or sampler allows it, we got this pan option here, which can create width for your sound, which is wonderful. And that's going to kind of dance the different notes around your head. And if you're doing hi-hats and other drums and stuff like that, I'd mainly recommend it for hi-hats. You can slightly pitch it here, which will give you that feeling of like, did you hit the outside of the hat? Did you hit closer to the inside of the hat? It'll give you that variation. Don't do it for something like piano though. And after we're done, we accept. And that is going to humanize our sound. If we didn't actually play this and we were just pasting things out, I want you to notice how our timings are off a lot. We got these rolls up, which you don't really need. But then besides that, things that are supposed to start on the same time, if you see here, this starts a little bit ahead, these start a little bit behind. That's how humans actually play. So Alt and grab, that's your best friend. If you have something big and you don't want to spend your time doing that for everything, Shift R will choose random notes. And then after you've chosen random notes, Alt, click one, shift them, however much you want. So all those shortcuts, remember them. I'm telling you, those are going to be some of the most helpful things for you while you're working this. Write them down, something. But those are some of the ones that I think are going to be most important to you. So now that we have this, I'm going to show you automations really quickly. Automations can be applied to almost anything within FL Studio by right-clicking and clicking Create Automation Clip. You can also do automation by turning automation on here and moving anything while the sound is actually playing. So, and if you'll see, that recorded automation into the pattern that I am within. And this is something that you're going to want to know about because you can accidentally record automation sometimes, and it is not here in this pattern. You will get frustrated. It is going to be in the back of one of these piano rolls here. Ignore these ARC-7 voice denoise ones. These were actually written from a denoiser I have on my vocals right now in the mixer. We'll talk about the mixer more in a second. But the one we want to look at is this is the one from where I was moving the panning for the electric piano. And back here, these things will hide from you and move stuff, and you will get frustrated if you don't know it's there. So in this drop down, this is how you get to these. And you can't right click to delete here. Usually you're on a pencil, something like that. Right clicking doesn't do it. You have to go to this delete option here and get rid of that. And if you stuck with me up until this point, you'll thank me for this part one day. So now that we did all that, I have this automation clip, which I linked to our hi-hats panning, which is right here. We got volume, and then we have our panning. So left, right, overall volume. And here I can affect the overall panning of our sound. Now, what I had going on there wasn't that awesome, but you can do this for fade-ins, for volume. You can use it for all kinds of stuff. But what I'm going to do for the hat, because I want to show you as much useful stuff as possible, is first I'm going to reset these. Okay. I'm going to click this LFO button. And the reason I want to do this is because I want the hats to kind of go back and forth, left to right. And what this does is this line is going to be our automation. So now that's dancing around our head a little bit. There's some controls here you can play with, which are going to change the shape, the amount, all that stuff. But I achieve this just by changing the speed a little bit, and that is automation. If you want to learn more cool stuff like that, check out my video on internal controllers, where I'll show you a bunch of stuff within FL Studio that can control and affect things in a similar manner. Now, because working with an automation clip can be kind of tricky, I think I actually will show you a volume automation. So I'm going to create automation clip again, but for the volume of the electric piano. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you how to not mess up your volume and how to do these automations. So I'm going to right click my value where it's at and click copy value. So now, no matter where I put a point in here, I can paste value, and that'll bring me to the volume that my piano is at right now, which is perfect if I like the volume my piano's at right now. You don't really want it fluctuating in volume all the time. So now that I've done that, maybe I want it to fade in over a whole bar. So I will put a point at the end of our first bar. I'll make sure to paste the value of our volume, and then I'll drop this. And now I've got a fade in. I can also grab in between any of these, and I can skew it in either direction. Right? So that's how to do that. Always right click, copy value, and paste value. That'll save your life a million times rather than being all zoomed in here and trying to sit there and get it right. So now that we got this, one of the final pages we're going to talk about is the mixer panel. Really quickly, before we do that though, I do want to state that every single instrument and everything is going to have wrappers here with options. Those are a bit advanced, but if you are into learning all the different options, videos above. So now that I've given these different wrappers and pages a mention, because I feel like I didn't before, we will go to our mixer. This mixer here is where a lot of the good stuff is going to happen. If you'll notice, our drums are showing up here. Our piano, however, isn't. So why is that? Well, if we come back to our channel rack, when this project was first started, we'll notice we had these already pre-routed to the mixer. Our piano, however, is not. So you can change that by dragging this around. You'll see the highlighted section up here change. Or you can do it in the top right corner of your plugin wrapper page. However, I'm going to give you a little pro hack and show you something pretty cool. There is a shortcut in FL Studio that pre-routes these to the first available mixer track and names the mixer track for you and colors it according to the color of anything in here, if you're into that kind of thing. So this is Control L. If I hit Control L, you'll see I now have Lin Kick here, same color, with the same number. And if you ever want to rename or recolor anything, you can click here and go rename and color icon, or with this window open, it'll be in this drop down. If you do it a lot and you like to stay organized, F2 is the hotkey. So I can just F2, and that works for almost any window. So not just here, but if I'm in this track, for example, and I want to rename insert 5, I can click F2, lets me rename it. I got a tab here for color. And I can even give it a symbol if I want, which I don't usually do the symbols, but more power to you. So what's even cooler though, again, pro tip about this, is I can select multiple of these, hit Control L, and it just did all of them for me. So this is a wonderful shortcut, and if you're not using it, I guess I shouldn't say you should use it, but you should use it. So our mixer panel is going to immediately in front of us show us a few different cool options. If I click play, I can change our volumes here. These volumes are going to get a good mix level for each and every sound, which is completely separate from our volumes here. So that means I can have this volume automation here, and I can change the overall volume here. And we also have pan here as well, which I can change standalone from the pans over here. right? Now, something else we have is these mute solo buttons. So if I want to hear one thing, I can right click it. I can right click again to undo, or we can left click to mute it. Which is a good way to check out what instruments are doing what or causing what things to happen. Now, these mute solo buttons are also available here. Again, completely standalone. If I mute our piano here, it will not mute the piano there, and vice versa. So face value, that's what we're getting there, but let's talk about what we actually have going on through the mixer here. So anything that's sent to mixer 1, which right now is that lane kick, is going to come in at our options over here. It's going to come into the top here. It's going to go through all of these slots. Each of these slots, we can add effects. FL Studio comes with a lot of great effects. And then after the effects, it goes through this little EQ here on the bottom. And after the EQ, it's actually not going to go through this output, but instead, then it'll go through this mute, panning, and volume. And that is going to be your signal flow. Now, while that doesn't seem that important right now, that is something that you'll want to shove into the back of your mind because it can become very important later. To the right of our effects here, if we were to load any effects in, we have a dry wet knob or a mix knob. And that is going to affect the mix level of an effect on our effects track. So if I come over to my vocals, which I hit off over here, and I go to my vocal chain, if I start changing this, you will hear a difference in my vocals. My denoiser here, you'll see, is keeping a lot of noise out. I've got this EQ, which is completely changing my voice. I've got my little mic room here, which is completely changing my voice. Got some different things going on here. And as I change them, you'll see that I'm kind of getting some different stuff going on. And that's pretty much the percentage of how much of what we're getting. Now, while this is cool for things like EQs, this creates what's called phase shift, which can cause phase issues. That's more advanced. But without getting advanced, I'm telling this to you because I just want to say that changing that mix level isn't always the best idea. Many plugins have a mix level within them, and that's where you will want to change the mix at if you can. For example, here's my mix level on this one. Now, something else we'll have is our mute options here as well. So if I want to completely turn off some effects, I can. Check, 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 check. So your track's all done. You want to export it. What do? Here's a blank project I opened up so that my vocals don't cut out when I export this. We'll talk about the export options. So when you click save and export as a file type, we chose WAV. It'll ask you where you want to save it. If I was to save it to my desktop, I could name it, click save. And now we've got quite a few options here. A WAV at 16-bit is CD audio standard. You can always go for something more, but that's going to increase the size of the audio. Our resampling quality is going to have to do with if you stretched audio a lot in your project or not. Your projects automatically default to 24-point sync. You can go a little bit higher to 32 if you wanted, but this is going to increase the size of your project a lot and actually only has to do with the instances where things are getting resampled. Unless you're getting weird things happening to your song when you're exporting it, I'd say keep this down lower. Some people max it out because they think since it says quality and they think, oh, we're getting better sound, but that is not necessarily the truth. You can save as MP3 and other options, but for right now, we'll just stick to WAV. Down here in our miscellaneous, you'll want to make sure these three are on. These ones over here are kind of optional, but make sure split mixer tracks is off. Split mixer tracks will actually split every single one of these tracks into individual WAV files, which is great for if you're sending what's called stems to somebody, like a mix engineer to mix your song, stuff like that. However, if you're just exporting your song itself, you'll want to keep this off. And then before we get to the bottom, I forgot to mention at the top, we've got mode. You'll want to make sure you're exporting your song generally. And you'll have three options here: cut remainder, leave remainder, wrap remainder. You'll generally leave this how it is. Cut remainder is going to just kind of cut off the end. Leave remainder, if you have an effect running or something like that, it'll leave it and just kind of let the tail run off. And wrap remainder will take a little bit of the end of the song and kind of wrap it back to the beginning of the song, which is for if you're exporting loops. That way your loop plays into itself nice and smooth instead of having a choppy restart every time. So cut remainder is what you want. Something else to note that can frustrate you beyond belief is if you have anything selected in the playlist, which I didn't show you this either, so it's a good thing I'm going back. How I hit control and selected, you can also select sections and time in the playlist. If you have anything selected in here and we go to export, see the mode is song selection or pattern. I have exported the split mixer tracks of whole songs to save and keep for later. And then I'll go to open that project and my whole project's gone because I exported 1 second of audio by doing the song selection. And I've had to re-export songs before because of this dang selection. So keep in mind, if anything's selected, you've kind of got an issue going on there. Something you can do very quickly is we can come here and click Control A and it'll select our entire song. So if you click Control A before every time you export, you will make sure you have selected everything that you want selected. And that'll export all of it. I can't really think of anything else that I think you should know immediately. That just about covered all the important pages, important functions, and most useful shortcuts I could think of. So to summarize, you've got a couple main pages. You've got the mixer where we talked about the flow of the audio. We have our channel rack where you're going to make your patterns and your melodies. We have the playlist where you're going to organize and actually make the arrangement of your song. And we have your browser where you're mainly going to get your sounds from and samples. There was also a lot of other goodies thrown in there. It's quite a lot to go through everything, so check out the timestamps below if you want to go back and reference anything. And I hope this was helpful. A lot of my channel is about the in-depth and the features of FL Studio, so subscribe, hit the little bell button, and feel free to browse. You will find a lot of information that can help you get started and bring you from a beginner to a power user in no time. And if you like this video, please like this video. If you have any comments, please comment. I always appreciate a subscribe. It's Warren with Scale Audio. Adios.